Hello, everyone. So, welcome. My name is Louay El Jamal, and I am the Programs Manager for Arts Council Wood Buffalo. This is the Q&A live stream with Jamal-e-Fatima and Hira Noor, and we're here to talk about a book of kind of a collection of poetry and illustrations that they've put together called It's Past Midnight Somewhere. But before we dive into that, I'd always like to start with the fact that as Arts Council, we recognize that everything we do, with everything we do, we are always working, living, and creating on the ancestral territories of the Dene, Cree, and Métis Nation, as well as other Indigenous peoples. We really believe that we are all treaty people together in our collective home within the boundaries of Treaty 8. And I would also like to acknowledge and welcome people from all other treaty territories, for people who may be joining us through the internet tonight as well. One more kind of housekeeping thing to share. For those of you who don't know, Arts Council Wood Buffalo is a nonprofit charitable organization that supports the growth and success of the arts. And we are very grateful to our donors and sponsors who make programs like the one that you're about to watch tonight possible. So for more information on how to donate, you can visit our website at artscouncilwb.ca/donate. Great. So now this is where I loop in my other guests tonight. I am joined by Jamal-e-Fatima and Hira. Jamal is the poet and Hira is the illustrator. So how are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
I always like to start with a bit of a check-in. Are you guys feeling nervous to be blasting this through the interwebs?
Of course.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
No, you guys do excellent. Okay, so let's start with just introducing ourselves a little bit. So Jamal, I'll start with you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your experience as an artist?
Sure. My name is Jamal. I have been living in Portland for 2 years now. I always wrote as a younger person. I have written poems and prose in my previous life, as I like to say, before even moving to Canada. Fast forward to 2007, when I moved to Canada, just life took over and I stopped writing for pretty much a decade. And I picked up the pen again during COVID lockdown, pretty much last year in spring. That's me.
Nice. And Hira, can you tell us a bit about yourself? How do you tell us about your experience as an artist?
My name is Hira, and I am the illustrator of It's Past Midnight Somewhere. I'm originally from Pakistan, but based here in Canada since 2007. I live in Fort McMurray with my family. We are a family of 6. I'm a mom of 4 amazing kids, 3 girls and a boy. I'm also rendering my services for Fort McMurray Public School District. I work with special needs students in a local elementary school. When I'm not working, you will find me either spending time with my kids or making art. Art is my childhood friend, and it works like wonder for my mental health. And what else? I decided to share art with the world back in 2018, and which is now a small business called Indus River. So yeah, pretty much about me.
The way you muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was saying that I know that both Hughes by Hira and Jamal's page, The Crafted Writer, you both have Instagram pages that are a great way of
That's right.
Staying in touch with you guys. So do you want to share what your Instagram handles are quickly for people who are interested?
Yes, I am The Crafted Writer, both on Instagram and Facebook.
And I'm Hughes by Hira, Hughes _ by and then _ Hira on both Facebook and Instagram as well as Twitter.
Nice. Okay, so how did you guys come to meet each other?
Should I start?
Well, I was like,
So yeah, it was back in 2018, I believe. We met for the first time in a local community event hosted by Merkazul Islam, I believe. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and we both were mentoring kids for their projects. I would say it was a brief interaction with Jamal because the program was structured. But surprisingly, we found out later that our husbands are playing badminton together. And then we happened to meet with each other quite often after that.
Is that the same experience for you, Jamal?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so then from your perspective, Jamal, can you tell us how the idea to come together to create this book was born?
So the idea of the book was not completely new to me. I had been approached with the idea 3 years ago, at that time from the University of Regina Press. I picked it up and then I abandoned it completely. I just felt very overwhelmed by that experience. And pretty much I self sabotaged it for me. Um, and on and off, many people had approached me and said, you should write and you have a story to tell. And I really believe each one of us has a story and there are people waiting to hear it. So during the lockdown, there was a lot of emotional stuff going on. Started to write again in March, and by May, I think I had 50 poems. And one day there was like no public gatherings at that time. Hira, one night I got up and I was like, I knew what Hira did, like illustrations and designs and art. She's a mixed media artist, so she can pretty much, you can throw an idea at her and she can make wonder with it. Um, we went walking at the Gregor Lake, and I asked her, "Would you like to do a book with me?" And it was an instant yes. And we never looked back.
I love it. I love when the kind of creative projects like that just seem to go so smoothly, like it's almost natural, organic, meant to be from the very
Hmm.
beginning. Hey. So one thing that I want to let our audience who is watching from their homes know is that if at any point while you're watching tonight you do have any questions that you would like to ask either Jamal or Hira, please feel free to type them into the comments section. We'll get them all on our end and we'll try our best to integrate them into the Q&A session as well. So that's there as well. Now, throughout tonight's Q&A, we're going to be sharing and discussing certain excerpts from the book, which looks like this. But before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you guys have chosen to divide this book. So for those who might not have purchased it yet, I'm sure you will by the end of this, there are 4 sections in the book. The first is called Where I Have Been. The second is Where I Come From. The third is Where I Am Now. And the fourth is Where I Am Going. Was it always your intention to divide the book into these 4 sections?
No, not at all. When I wrote, I just wrote individual poems. I didn't even have a theme. I was just going with life experiences, things that I needed to talk about with myself. Like, honestly, I needed to accept most of the stuff myself. I was looking for closure and healing. That's where all this started from. Um, and then I started to see a theme emerge. And then I was doing also research at that time, like, okay, what do poetry books look like nowadays? What has Rupi Cortez? What has Jasmine Cortez done? Um, some of those self-published poets who now actually have been picked up by big publishing houses. There's also a modern contemporary style where poems are not titled anymore. Do I need title or not? So these were some questions I kept revisiting. Half of the journey, I didn't think I would have chapters at all. I think it was towards the end of my manuscript, like in August or something. I started to see this theme, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is my journey. This is like you're going through a journey, who I have been and who I am today." So, and like once I had the first one, like this is where I started and this is where I am today, it was easy to put the two in between. And it was, again, it was like so natural and meant to be. And I exchanged it with Hira. I said to her, "What do you think?" And she's like, "This is amazing."
I agree. I really like the fact that it's organized that way because it kind of it kind of, I think, forces or encourages, I would say, the reader to see the book as like a progression or as a journey. You know what I mean? One of the things that I found most interesting is that, you know, when I look at these sections, I think of like the past, present, and future. But then when I look at this more closely, you have almost like two different sections that are dedicated to the past. So there's the first one where I have been, and the second where I come from. So how do you define the difference between where I have been and where I come from?
Sometimes I have difficulty in answering that question too. And I sat with that question for a couple of days actually. And I was like, yeah, why did I decide to separate these two experiences? One is heavily based on my physical experiences, where I have been. You will see the first poem is called Ruins. And it's one of my like darker poems, which talks about doubt and deceit and distrusted and hurt. That's where I started this journey from. And where I come from is mostly what I am made of that we forget. The more we experience pain and hurt and betrayal and lies and distrust, the more we start to move away from the organic and authentic us that we were made to be. So I always had where I come from, but unfortunately, where I have been is where I started this journey from. So it's almost like, okay, this is where I am, but in order to reclaim who I am, I have to revisit that pain. And that's why the tagline of the book actually comes from that. I have to revisit that pain and remember where I actually come from in order to reclaim who I am.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I'm just still soaking it all in and making sure that we're all unmuted. Okay, so I'm going to use that as an opportunity to transition us into our first excerpt, which is from the first section. So it's from the Where I Have Been section, and it's called Before Dawn Breaks. So here is Before Dawn Breaks.
4 a.m. thoughts bubbling in my head, like an unopened yet shaken spirited bottle. My 4 a.m. thoughts, can you wait until the sun comes up, until dawn breaks? So it gives me time to soak you in warmth before letting you go.
It's so serene. So what you guys saw at the end of that video there was and one of the illustrations that Hira has made for the book as well. And I wanted to start by asking, what tended to come first for you guys? Was it the poems complementing the illustrations, or the illustrations complementing the poems?
Hira, do you want to go?
Yeah, it went. To be honest, it went both ways. It was twofold process. So from Jamal, and she used to share her poems with me so that I can draw inspiration. And from my end, I used to share my pencil work with her so that she can write accordingly, right? And also she used to send me some prompts when I used to get lazy. That Hira, now I'm going to start working on fireworks or from dragonfly, and then I drew accordingly. So it was like that. It was a twofold process. It went both ways.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a very symbiotic relationship between the two of you. So this one that we just saw, the one that's attached to Before Dawn Breaks, do you remember whether it was poem first or illustration first?
Yeah, I drew the sketch first, and then Jamal wrote the poem.
Okay.
And yeah.
So I'm curious, like obviously when it's the poem first, that's the source of inspiration. But when it's the illustration, what was the source of inspiration for you when you drew this?
Uh, Most of my artwork, whether it's pebble art or knife painting or sketches, they are inspired by the kids I work with, their different background or their unconditional love or their day-to-day struggles.
Hmm.
So this art was totally inspired by the girl which I was working with and her day-to-day struggle.
Oh, nice. You know, when you say that, it's actually super clear, kind of, to see
Yeah.
that in the image. So that's so neat to know. Thanks for sharing. Um, my next question is for Jamal. Um, one of the poems in the book, it almost shares the same title as the title of the book itself. So it's Past Midnight Somewhere. What does the title mean to you? Why did you choose It's Past Midnight Somewhere to summarize all of these these poems?
Yeah, the title of the book definitely came after the book. We struggled with it for the longest time. It was supposed to be Basket of Rainbows because I wanted a very bright and hopeful title. Um, and then finally we settled on this one. This poem is very, somehow I relate to it really dearly. It talks about the two of us. So there are two lines. Can I narrate it? There are two lines in the poem that says, a poet struggles with a word chain, an artist draws and stencils in disdain. That's the two of us. So it's, this poem is not just generic, it's also very personal to our process of putting this book together. And then we go into the world of all these like and similar processes that everything starts with a struggle to become something beautiful. And also because both of us, we both wear 5 or 6 different hats throughout the day. We didn't have time to work on the book during the day. It was usually midnight or late night when I would
Mhm.
sit down with a couple of poems and she would be drawing. So again, it's a very, again, very personal to our journey and the process of what the book. So it was very natural when we picked it up, like this should be the title. And also it's just, it's curious, it's intriguing, it's curiosity. Where does midnight take you? Right? It's the start of a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love all of that, especially so it never clicked in my head that that poem that you narrated for us is very self-aware of the fact that it's inside of a book that was made by these two artists. And also, I love that you like when you say, you know, that you're working in the late hours of the night. I don't think there's any stronger sign of passion in an artist than when you're willing to stay up that late just to get more of those words done or those illustrations done. So it's a reflection of how
True.
passionate you are about this work too. um Okay, one more question just about kind of this section of the book, the Where I Have Been section. And you kind of touched on it a little bit already, Jamal, but it's filled with a lot of feelings of kind of like uncertainty and insecurity, being held back and that kind of stuff. And you described to me personally once, you know, offline, that you see this collection as being a journey from fitting in to belonging. So I wanted you to explain what does that mean to you, the journey between fitting in to belonging?
um Let me tell you a little bit about myself then. So I'm a culture child. So I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I did my high school from there, so 18 to 20 years there. And then I was shipped off to Pakistan because at that time, expat kids were not allowed to take higher education in their universities. It has changed since then, however, at that time. So I was shipped to a country that I belonged to. I didn't fit in. Struggled, did my master's, came back to Saudi Arabia until I was married, and then I moved back to Pakistan again. And a year after that, I and my husband moved to Canada. Um, and throughout this experience, this moving around and shuffling, I was always told to fit in. And I tried so hard. And every time, the harder I tried, the more I didn't fit in and the more I struggled. I was and it's also how girls, especially young girls, are told to be a certain way and a certain way. You're not enough, you're not proper, you're not perfect, and nobody expects anything less than perfect from you. I went through all those experiences. And finally, only 2 years ago, and then I moved. So I lived in Regina. In Canada, Regina was my home, and it still is in some ways. It's my first home where I lived for 10 years. Then I moved provinces. So from Saskatchewan, I moved to Alberta, and all of a sudden, I was facing the same question again. And I was like, what is going on? Why? And again, I tried to fit in so hard. And this time I was already 40. So I'm like, this better resolve itself. Only to realize only 2 years ago, I just had an epiphany during an experience when I was like literally not even in Canada. I realized that I have to belong to myself first before I expect to belong in a physical space. And that's when I release this notion of home being something physical around me. I always thought it is a physical house or a physical city or a physical province or a country. It no longer is. My home is in me, and I carry it with me wherever I go. So instead of trying to fit in, when I belong to myself, I attract similar and like-minded community people around me. They become my community, they become my family, and it becomes home to me.
You need to tell me when your TED Talk tickets are going to be sold. I'm going to be the first one in the seats. No, but
oh my goodness, Louis.
I can tell that that's very true for you because it permeates throughout all of the poems that are in this book. So it's a lot of wisdom that you've poured into these pages for sure. And it actually also transitions us now into the next video. So this is from the second section of the book called Where I Come From. And it is called Homage to the Women of Indus.
To the women who birthed me, to the ones who raised me, to the many more who nurtured me, who came before me, and who came before them. The heat they bore, the systems they fought, the values they marked on our collective, the morals they gave to our stories. You were born of a soil I am oceans apart from. But when it rains of nostalgia, of tears and of pride, I smell of the same musk, of the misty influence, and of the gentle stride.
Okay, so tell us about the women of Indus. Who are they? What do they mean to you? I know a lot of people have never heard the word Indus before, so educate us.
Should I go first, Hira? Oh, Hira is muted. Okay. It's so eye-opening to me because I grew up with this word, like industrialization and the Indus River. We learned it in school, in elementary school, pretty much. And when you say that, I'm like, this is amazing. I can go on and on and on about this particular poem, but I won't. So industrialization, just some fun fact, is one of the oldest in the world. It's like from Bronze era. For archaeology experts, they would know exactly what I'm talking about. It is the southwestern region of the Indian subcontinent right now, mainly in Pakistan and a little bit in southwest India. The Indus River is the longest in Pakistan, and actually all the crossing the whole country of Pakistan, it dips into India and then pours into China. So it's pretty interesting. This poem started with pretty much like paying a tribute to the women, that generations and generations of women that came before me. There's a journey I'm on right now. I've only scratched the surface of it, which is about generational trauma. And as women, I realized that we carry trauma from not just from our mothers, but from two grandmothers, like two generations before us. And it was very important to me to at least start addressing it. So this is why I wrote this as like a homage to that. It's also homage to the heritage. Being one of the oldest civilizations of the world, this area and the women that come from that region have gone through a lot. So in very few words, I wanted to explain that and embrace that. We know now that that the country divided 75 years ago and then went through another division in 1965. So I also come from two generations of refugees. So both my parents were born in a country and then moved to what is now Pakistan. And my grandparents were born in India and then moved to what was then Pakistan, which eventually became Bangladesh. So there are two generations of movement and turmoil that they carried with us and unknowingly passed down to us. Again, I'm just scratching the surface of generational trauma with this poem, but I also wanted to start with like a warm hug.
Yeah, and I can see too how, like, especially with so many different generations and the changing borders of the countries as well, that the Indus River is likely the one constant that you can refer to in that area.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you speak to this as well, Hira? Like, what is your experience when you hear Indus or Indus River? What does it mean for you?
I could talk about the sketch, like whenever she made I think she wrote the poem first and then I made a sketch. And yes, and I found her poem very relatable enough to draw inspiration from. Like, I thought about the fact of being away from your loved ones, from missing culture and your traditions. And whatever came first in my mind was the lady with the traditional dress and with some embroidery on it. And then I just drew like that.
Yes, it looks very traditional, and it's honestly one of the most striking of the images that I take from the book is this one. It has so much tradition, and it feels like generations of culture kind of poured into one image. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Of course. So now another kind of topic is. Or I guess one of the things that I found really unique about this book is that it has those themes of immigration and emigration. And especially as an immigrant myself, I felt that was very, very easy to relate to through the poems and the images. So what do you both, and we'll do maybe Hira first and then Jamal, what do you feel you have learned as an immigrant that has influenced these poems and these illustrations?
Immigrating from back home to Canada was not an easy decision for me. I'm talking about me, as it is far away from my birthland, and despairing from from my surroundings, my childhood, my parents, my friends, tradition, so leaving them behind and then starting a new journey for the betterment. So it's kind of it gives a mixed feeling of having a joy of secured future and at the same time leaving your loved ones behind. So I would say that Jamal portrayed very well in her poems like Expect or In This Moment, and it said it all.
I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Sorry. Jamal, your response?
I want to say Hira and I are women of Indus too. Our birth cities are the same. We come from, I don't know, the thousand descendants of the Indus civilization. And we carry that, like the last line is, I smell of the same musk of the misty influence and of the gentle stride. We both carry that, both the joy and the burden of being from that land.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I'm going to use this as an opportunity for us to take some of the questions that have been coming in through the Facebook chat. The first one here is for Hira, and it's from Liana, who's our executive director. It seems she's a fan of your work from maybe Instagram. So she says, your artwork that I'm familiar with is so colorful. Was this a departure for you to work in black and white?
Okay, so if she's following me since beginning, she can see that sketches were with me like since beginning. I started with sketching first, and then just to have a little change, I made myself towards knife paintings or colorful art. And then when I met with Jamal, we had lots of researching and all, and my research work was more about what kind of illustrations has been done in the past. And then we came to a conclusion that we should work on sketching, and we decided to do traditional sketching.
Nice. I love that. Okay, and so a second question. This one is for Jamal. Do you, and it says Arts Council, it's from Will Collins, our communications person. So he's curious, do you typically write poems in English, or do you also write in other languages?
I speak English as a second language. I may think in English, that's why. However, my dad and my grandfather, they both used to write poetry in Urdu. You never know, I may dabble in it.
I will also be the first person to buy that book when it's published. Okay, great. So let's go into our third video. So this one is from the third section, which is called Where I Am Now. And the poem itself is called Cocoon.
Don't be scared of the dark, of the solitude, of the monsters lurking under your bed. The most beautiful creatures emerge after being cocooned in the solitude of their own selves.
It's short and sweet. So I have a question for Jamal in response to this one. There are a couple of poems in this collection that reference solitude as something that should be embraced and accepted as opposed to feared. And I feel like a lot of people are typically afraid of being alone or afraid of solitude. So what value does the concept of solitude have to you?
It's very similar to belonging. I didn't get to belonging without solitude. So for years, especially in our 20s and at least in my earlier 30s, I tried to be friends with everyone. You're performing, perfecting, proving all the time because you want to prove yourself to that you fit in. See how it all like weaves through? I did that too. I was so scared of being alone that I changed myself so much so that there was a time I couldn't recognize myself. Only to realize that belonging comes with embracing yourself. And when you embrace yourself and you start to find joy in who you are, because you're original and authentic and you totally, and you're like you have imperfections and that's absolutely fine. So is everyone. You start to enjoy being the time with yourself. and the funny thing is, you don't need a lot of people around you. You just need a few trustworthy people, and those people will find you. Once you're able to be yourself, they will be around you, they will be your friends, they will become your community. I think I said that in my like conversation about belonging versus fitting in. So it was the vehicle of solitude how I got to belonging.
So the sooner we all accept to abandon that fear of solitude and free and isolation, I guess the sooner we become free. I love it. Okay, so let's transition into the artistic process now. So talking a bit about what it was like to create this. And first question maybe for Hira. What was it like for the two of you to be collaborating on this during the pandemic? So did you feel like it hindered you, or were there ways that it motivated you?
I have all positives about this collaboration, to be honest. I would say that it was kind of blessing because we were being stuck at home. And this collaboration was the thing which kept me going throughout the pandemic and lockdown. So sketching and making art for this book was a part of my self-care at that time. What else? So I would say that, yeah, I have all positives about it. Secondly, I know in the beginning, time was a big challenge for me because we knew that my kids were working from home. I was also working. Like it was a chaotic situation, to be honest. And so in the beginning, taking time out for this project was a little bit harder. But again, because Jamal and me, we both had a same mission, same goal. So she was kind of motivation, like she was used to motivate me and ask me to, Hira, you have got 2 more sketches to go. Just get up and do it. So yeah, so I have all positive. I had a great experience working with her, and yeah, I would say that it's a great opportunity.
How about for you as well, Jamal?
Absolutely. March was tough. March and April was tough. If Fort McMurrayans remember, and I know they would, we faced a flood where actually my parents evacuated uh, in April. And before that, in March, my dad was gravely ill. So we went through not just a COVID global pandemic situation. We were going through on the family front. We were going through both of those experiences as well. Coming out of the flood, I was like, now or never. This is it. I have to get a book done. Well, like in the sense, I was really motivated to do something. Also because now this may sound a little bit dismal, but also because my dad had almost like we lost him almost. So I was like, I want to produce this for them to see that I can do this. And then when Hira was on board, it was also like I drove energy from her as well, because I felt, now we talked about being lonely. I felt I wasn't lonely when there was another person struggling with me.
Did your parents know you were working on this while
No,
your families?
my dad is the worst secret keeper. So I didn't tell him until I had the book in my hand.
Okay. And how about with you, Hira? Did your kids know?
Same, yeah. No, I didn't tell anybody about it. No, my family, like my kids, they knew about it, and I am really I'm thankful to them that they supported me a lot during that time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my next question is for Jamal. You show a lot of vulnerability in these poems in a very empowering sense. Especially I found in like the first section, the where I come from section, which is all the hardest part you describe it as. So my question is, on behalf of all artists, how did you access that part of yourself for writing? And also, how did it feel knowing that this vulnerability would be shared with the whole world?
Oh my God. Sometimes I still try to fake it that no, I didn't do that. I didn't say that in the book. What book? As human beings, we go through those roller coaster of emotions. Honestly, Louis, like the epiphany that I was talking to you about that I came to 2 years ago made me open up about some of the most difficult journeys or experiences of my life. And after that, I just liberated myself. After I liberated myself, there was no going back. Once I opened the door to my authentic self, I was like, I am never going back to the fake Jamal of the 20s. um, the other thing is, when you're vulnerable, the most vulnerable poems and the most vulnerable posts on Instagram drive the most audience. And the reason is, like, I love Brené Brown's work. The reason is because bravery or courage is contagious. When you show courage, other people around you show courage as well on their own front. It may look different, sound different, but I feel that when somebody else takes that leap of faith, when Hira does that, I will feel it and I would do something in my writing journey. And maybe you would feel it, Louis, and you'll do it. You'll create a theater play out of it. Who knows? But courage is contagious. Um, so I drive the energy from that notion, the feeling that I feel when somebody opens up to me with some compassion. I try also not to open up the raw parts which I'm not ready to because it may trigger me. I'm so very cautious about it. Um, but I, as much as I did that, the more vulnerability I showed, the more appreciation I got, the energy I fed into more work, and the book became what it is today.
Mm-hmm. That's something that I would actually commend both of you on. Through your the platforms that you have, I have noticed that you very much try to not necessarily inspire others, but just to, like you said, to be brave for others so that they can share whatever their own truth is in their own time and their own way. So if anyone's looking, and this is not a plug, but if anyone's looking for some inspiration, I know I have gotten it from their Instagram
Aw.
page. So make sure that you do follow. I do have one question from the audience that I'll slide in now before we swap to our last video. And this one comes from Scott Meller. So he says, Jamal, do you approach your poetry with structure or allow inspiration to dictate the form? Did you find yourself writing differently when inspired by Hira's illustrations as opposed to creating more from your own experience before the sketch was born?
Thank you so much, Scott. That's like making me think now. Absolutely inspiration. When I feel like writing about something, I will. And something that came to my mind, and this is how like-minded spirits work. When the bomb blast happened in Lebanon in August, was it August 5th or 6th? The same night, I wrote a poem on it, and Hira drew something on it. The next morning, I was like, Hira, I wrote a poem. And Hira was like, I drew this. And we posted it in collaboration that day. So when something moves inside of you that itches to come out in form of words, I do it. And then I look at structure. Do I want it to rhyme? Do I not want it to rhyme? Do I want it as raw as it is? And of course, most of my poems I had to revisit and scratch, and some were longer and made it shorter, some were shorter, and I expanded on them. So that is how my process is. How Hira and I worked, like Hira said that, it was like a twofold process. Some illustrations came before the poem, and sometimes the poem came first. The illustration that Louis showed us, the girl playing with the bubbles, I loved it. I loved the intricacy and the delicacy of it, and it existed even before the notion of the book started. The idea of the book started, but I had seen it and I wanted to write something on it. And this poem came much later in the collection, but it came and I was like, this would go so perfectly with it. And Hira agreed. So this is how these two went together. The cocoon is perhaps that Louis showed. This one? Sorry, this one? I absolutely love this work. This is my favorite work of Hira's. Um, the poem came first and she drew it afterwards. And still, like, both of these processes still worked, because when I and Hira used to talk, I used to say to her, like, I don't want to control your process. You have a different medium and I have a different one. I want you to own your process completely, and we'll figure it out at the end of. So when the manuscript was ready, so manuscript means the collection of poems were ready, and Hira's collection was ready, we sat down and collaborated. Like, we tried to correlate the two collections together. Some gelled together like nothing. Some we had to let go, and that was okay. Some we had to let go, and I think there were still like 2 or 3 that she created after that coordination.
Beautiful answer. And I have one more for the both of you from Leanna again. Do you ever struggle to create or have periods of time when you think you can't create? And what do you do to kind of unblock yourself from that? So Hira, do you want to go first?
It never happened. Like, you know what? In this journey, we had such a good time together. We used to, I know in the beginning time, meeting personally was an issue, like we couldn't meet, but then we had ample of time to sit on, online, to had plenty of meetings. And then Jamal used to tell me, like, we had Jamal used to send me her poems, or she used to send me prompts, so I had like couple of options, right, to work on. So it never been an obstacle for me or struggle.
And for you, Jamal?
If generically, like, if you're talking generally, if you're hinting at writer's block or a creator's block, so this is something that I found out much earlier on in my writing journey, that I don't consider a block. I consider it a break. I call it a writer's break. And I actually did like a 10-minute video on it for somebody on like who invited me to write a blog. So I do have a blog as well. So anyways, I consider it a break, and I say, okay, the universe is telling me to take a break and do something else. So I pick up something else. I will paint, or I'll try a different medium. Or I will go walk, or watch a couple of episodes of a show I have abandoned. Right. So I take the opportunity to take a break.
I think there's so much wisdom in both of your responses, actually. I especially, one takeaway that I got from Hira's response is that sometimes it doesn't hurt to let people into your process as well. Like, I think one of the beauties of you guys working together is that you can inspire each other and continue to do that. I think a lot of the times as artists, we have this mentality of like, it's mine until it's ready to be shared with the world. But sometimes maybe bringing that extra person in, that trusted, source, can also be really motivating and help to move things forward. Okay, so I'll play our last video for the evening, and then we have a couple of last questions before we all go. This is from the last section of your book, which is titled Where I Am Going, and the piece itself, the poem, is called Solitude.
O solitude, what stories you tell, what language you speak. Only those who seek you out are able to hear you indeed.
So that's the poem and the illustration that actually closes out the book as well. So it's the last thing that you leave us with. I have 2 more questions for you guys. The first is, can you speak a bit about what the publishing journey was like for you? So how did you go about getting this book published? What options did you have? And why did you decide the route that you did take?
Hira, you want me to go?
Yes,
Okay.
please, because although she took me in a loop, but I will hand over this question towards Jamal.
I did take care of the publishing journey. I looked into indie publishing, and self-publishing was my choice. Again, there was like a certain energy that I was filled with. I wanted to get this done in this year. So I didn't want it to be picked up or to wait for 5 years to be picked up by a marketing company or something like that. And also with research, and I think I mentioned this, we know there are some bigger poets like Rupi Kaur who self-published her book herself with very minimal dollars, and now she has been picked up by publishing houses. So self-publishing was my choice, and for that I chose Amazon KDP. However, the most of the information and the number of new tutorials I saw, YouTube videos, bloggers that I read, most of the information is US based. With the pandemic, what we realized was in September, when we were ready to order an author copy, which is a copy that the authors see first before releasing it out in the world, we realized that Amazon KDP is not shipping it out of US. So it was only available for US residents, and nowhere, I kid you not, nowhere in the world it was ever mentioned. It was only when you try to click on that button, you realize, oh, by the way, they're not shipping it to Canada or anywhere else in the world. So we took this huge risk of putting this world, like publishing, like literally publishing the book, putting it out in the world on Amazon, and then receiving the author copy. So, and we prayed, and it took us 3 weeks. Definitely, the copies were also very delayed. They were 2 to 3 weeks. There was once we had to push the deadline to November, and I was anxious about it. And Hira was like, no worries, we're just pushing it 2 weeks. Like, what are we losing? And to that, when I sat down with that question, I was like, yeah, we're not losing anything. So these were some of the obstacles. We self-taught everything. I self-taught everything about that. And when we finally had this, it was just such a proud moment for both of us. And Hira, my dad was the first one to get the first copy, and Hira was the second one.
That's really sweet. And I really want to commend both of you for doing that during the pandemic as well, like on top of everything else and all the other stresses that life brings to us, that you really persevered and that you brought this together within a year. I still think that's amazing. So on that note, the last question that I'll ask both of you, we'll do maybe Hira first and then Jamal second. For those of us who are dying to be like you, what advice do you have for people who are aspiring to write poetry or to create illustrations and have them published?
I can share that my art, like what I did, like what resources I used in it. So all of my artwork in this book is have been drawn by hand, and it's originally made by graphite pencils. I thought about using charcoal in the beginning, but then we decided to maintain the range of tonality and rendering just to stay within a theme. So we tried to stay in the theme. And then for the manuscript, I just scanned my sketches just to keep it natural and raw, and I handed over to Jamal to add it in a manuscript. So it was not a rocket science, to be honest. It was not fancy either, and it was since my first project, so it went like this, and I'm pretty happy about it.
So anyone can do it. I love that.
Yeah.
Thanks for inspiring us. And Jamal, what would your advice be?
Just keep writing. And nobody's perfect. Like a lot of us creatives, we hold our work really close to our heart. We fall in love with it, but the world doesn't know it exists. And really, like as a writer, I want this book in everybody's hand. I want my poems to reach every country in the world. That's all I care about. So nobody's perfect. Do it anyways. Write, just write, dump it on paper. Like whatever comes to your mind, dump it on paper, and then you can finish a little bit. And then, but do put it out in the world. Like do something with it. This is just our first project, and I, as an author, I could probably still pick out mistakes and revisit some of the poems, but I had to stop at some point.
Definitely. Okay, so before we sign off, tell us, where can we go to grab a copy of this book for ourselves?
Arts Council's Marketplace. Go to the marketplace.
Yes, and there are other locations as well. I appreciate you plugging Marketplace, but what other places can it be purchased from?
They can get it directly from me on my Etsy page. So I do have an Etsy shop link where the book is available. And the book is also available on Amazon. And physically, the book is actually available in 3 stores. One right here in Fort McMurray, Chocolate and Candlelight, near Timberley Registries. And the book is also in 2 stores in Regina, Saskatchewan, the Penny University and the Coil store in Emerald Park. If any Saskatchewanians are bought.
Nice. So I will also take this as an opportunity to show people a bit more about Marketplace, which you talked about. So if you were looking for her book, you can navigate to Marketplace on our website, scroll down and click on literary, and then you'll see her book as the first one there. It's Past Midnight Somewhere, available for purchase straight off the ACWB website as well. Okay, so thank you so much to both of you, Jamal and Hira, for sharing your time and also your experiences with us tonight. I really appreciate you making time for Arts Council and kind of, inspiring everybody who's watching as well.
Thank you for having us, Dwayne. This was amazing.
I'm glad. And I hope that the nerves have all kind of subsided as we went along.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Okay, so on that note, I will share a couple more messages from Arts Council before we let you go.
Yeah.
So for those who joined late or might not already know, Arts Council is a nonprofit charitable organization that supports the growth and success of artists in the region. We are very grateful to our donors and our sponsors who make programs like this possible. And also, we like to let people know that a portion of our donations always go towards free memberships for those who are in financial need. And those memberships, they serve to provide artists with free consultations. You get access to Marketplace so that local artists can sell their arts and crafts, on a local scale. We can draft letters of support. We offer promotion services and, of course, discounts as well for some of our events and programs. So on the donation side, if anyone would like more information on how to donate, you can visit our website at artscouncilwb.ca/donate. And if you are an artist interested in learning more about our membership program, you can visit us at artscouncilwb.ca/membership. That's everything for us tonight. Thanks so much, and I hope that everybody has a very safe and happy Friday evening. Thanks for joining us.